Hello class, welcome to our online class today where we're talking about multiplying and dividing decimals by powers of 10. Today you're going to learn how to multiply and divide a decimal by a power of 10, but before we jump into that, I want to take a look at what we've already learned earlier this year. Earlier this year we talked about multiplying by powers of 10 and we multiplied whole numbers. So we had problems very similar to the one right here. 5 times 10 to the power of 2. That's the same thing as saying 5 times 100, or 5 times a 1 with 2 zeros behind it. And 5 times 100 is 500. That's work that we've already done. You should be familiar with this. We did this earlier in the year. But today we're going to take it a step further and we're going to look at how to multiply decimals by powers of 10. But before we move on, I want to ask you a simple question. In the number 5 up here, where is the decimal? If we look at this 5 right here, think about where the decimal is in this number. That's right, the decimal is just to the right of the ones place, or just to the right of the 5. So the decimal would be right here, 5 times 100, and then our answer, 500, our decimal is going to be here. So keep that in mind. Think about how when we multiplied 5 times 100, our decimal place moved over 2 place values. That may not make sense right now, but I think it'll make sense in just a moment. So let's look at the next page here. We're going to take it one step further, and we're going to multiply decimals by powers of 10. So I have a problem that's very similar to the one we just did with the whole number. The only thing is I changed it from 5 to 5 3/10. So let's answer this. 5 3/10 times 100, or 5 3/10 times 10 to the second power. Now, some of you guys, you may think you know how to answer this, and I saw a lot of you answer the question this way when you took your pretest. And I understand why you answered it this way, but let's see if this is the correct answer. So here, let me show you this real quick. A lot of us would think that we would just have 5 3/10, and then we would just put 2 zeros behind it because we have an exponent of 2, and that would be our answer. However, let's think about this logically to see if this answer really makes sense. 5 3/10 and 5 300,000ths. Did we really change the value of this number when we answered this question? Is 5 3/10 equivalent to 5 300,000ths? It is equivalent. So if we multiplied it by 100, then the 5 3/10 would have to get larger, and our answer is equivalent. So that doesn't make sense. This answer is not logical here. So I saw a lot of us make this mistake, and I understand how you made that mistake, but this is not correct. Let me show you the correct way to do this. 5 3/10 times 10 to the second power. What we need to do is we need to change the value of the 5 to move it to a higher place value. And the way we do that is by moving the decimal. So we're going to take our decimal here, and we're going to move it 2 places to the right. Our decimal is right here. We're going to move it 2 places to the right, and we're going to place our decimal here now. So our answer is actually 530, which makes sense because if we estimate this, 5 3/10, that's pretty close to 5. So 5 times 100 is 500. That's pretty close to 530. So if we're estimating to check our answer, that estimate makes sense. So let's look at a rule for multiplying decimals by powers of 10. When multiplying by a power of 10, the decimal moves to the right the number of times indicated by the exponent. Okay? When multiplying by a power of 10, the decimal moves to the right the number of times is indicated by the exponent. So let's look at this here. 5 67 times 10 to the 5th power. So we are multiplying, so that means our place value needs to go to the right, or our decimal needs to go to the right, and we need to look at the exponent. Our exponent right here is 5, so we're going to move that decimal over 5 places to the right. So we're going to start off here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I moved it over 5 places, but you'll also notice that there's 3 spots here where there's not a digit. So I'm going to put a 0 in those places there, and then I'm going to put my decimal now all the way here at the end of this number, and I'm going to rewrite out my answer so it's nice and clear. So my answer is 567,000. 5 and 67 hundredths times 10 to the 5th power is 567,000. So now let's move on to division. When we multiplied by a power of 10, we move the decimal to the right. We multiplied, we move to the right. What do you think we will do to the decimal when we divide by a power of 10? Think about that. When we multiplied, we moved to the right. Now we're going to divide. So which way do you think the decimal is going to move? That's right. It's going to move to the left. So let's take a look at a problem here. 76 5/10 divided by 10 to the power of 2. So it's going to be done almost the same way as we did when we multiplied, except we're moving our decimal in the opposite direction, because in multiplication, we're trying to make the numbers larger. When we divide by a number larger than 1, our answer is going to get smaller. Our number is going to get smaller. So we start off here, and we're moving to the left 2 places because our exponent is 2. I'm going to place my decimal here, and now I'm going to rewrite my answer. Decimal 765, or we could say 765 thousandths. Let's look at a rule for dividing by decimals. When dividing a decimal by a power of 10, the decimal point moves to the left the number of times indicated by the exponent. Dividing a decimal, the decimal moves to the left the number of times indicated by the exponent. Let's look at one last example here. 23 5/10 divided by 5 or 10 to the 5th power. So we're dividing. That means our place value or our decimal needs to move to the left, and we're going to move over 5 places because our exponent is 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Place my decimal there. I'll put zeros in the spots where there's no digit, and now I'm going to rewrite out my answer. Decimal 0, 0, 0, 2, 3, 5 is my answer. So let's recap our lesson from the day. Remember, when we're multiplying by a power of 10, the decimal moves to the right. When we divide by a power of 10, the decimal moves to the left. And we know how far to move that decimal by looking at the exponent. I think you guys will do well on this. If you need to review this, remember you can always come back and watch this video at any time. Hope you guys do well on the assignment today.